Thank you for giving up your time tonight. I'd like to welcome you to the first part, at least, of the National Catholic Forensic League Grand National Tournament in person, which we are very, very happy to host you in DC this coming weekend. As Greg had indicated, we will be running through everything as if this was the meeting that we would have on Saturday morning before the speech rounds start. This just gives you an overview of the events, what to look for, where to go when you have some problems, just different things that we've incorporated to kind of help you along the way. If you're new to judging for the Grand National Tournament, this is really going to be helpful for you because it's going to give you a lot of information just to kind of take some of that tension or maybe anxiety off of you for a little bit whenever we get started on Saturday and you have to kind of hit the ground running. As Greg had mentioned, a number of us will be watching the chat. So if there at any point you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat function and we'll either pause or if a clarification is needed, or we can save those questions for the end as well. And without any further ado, I will turn it over. Thank you.
All right, Susan, thank you. So I am Greg Cunningham. I'm one of the co-chairs of speech for this coming weekend's NCFL Grand National Tournament and from the Boston Diocese. And thank you so much again for being here. I do want to talk just a little bit about logistics in terms of this weekend and some of the protocols that we will have in place and that we're going to ask you to follow and also help us to enforce as the weekend goes through. First of all, everyone will need to wear a mask in the rounds as they're walking around hallways between rounds. Any place that's an NCFL tournament site. This doesn't include the lobby of the hotels. It does not include the hallways in the hotels, and it does not include outside, but it does definitely include the rounds. So we would ask all judges, please make sure that your masks are on at all times during the rounds and in NCFL spaces. And also ask you to make sure that the students have their masks on, especially in rounds while they're sitting observing. The only time a mask can be taken off is if the student is actively engaged in performing or if they're taking a sip of water. And when they're taking the sip of water, it's literally lower your mask, take the sip, put the mask back on again. Also, we wanted just to let you know that we're going to ask you to try to help us enforce that. So if you see a student that maybe lowered their mask, forgot to put it back up again, just give them a gentle reminder to put their mask back up again. Again, obviously, you wouldn't want to do that while someone was performing if it was somebody sitting in the audience, but as soon as that performance is over, then you would want to just remind that student to make sure they keep the mask on. If someone is adamant about not wanting to wear the mask while they're sitting in the audience, there is a text line that'll be at the top of every single ballot. And you can text us and we will send someone to the round to make sure that the rules are enforced or that student who's not complying is removed from the round and quite possibly removed from the tournament if it's become a chronic issue for that student. Speakers may choose to wear their masks when they're performing, and this is perfectly fine. We would ask you, please, many of us have done this already with tournaments in our local leagues where we've run tournaments and students had to wear masks while they were performing. I can say I was a complete disbeliever that this was going to work. And we experimented, we tried it, and about a minute in, you kind of forget the student is wearing the mask. So if you don't have any experience with this, I assure you, again, if you focus on the overall performance and the overall presentation that's being made, you really do forget that the student is wearing the mask. So if a student does choose to keep their mask on for their performance, that's perfectly fine. They should not be penalized in any way. And please, I beg you, please do not make even a mention of it on the ballot, because we don't want students to get the impression either way that them wearing the mask or not wearing the mask had any effect whatsoever on your rankings for the round. After a student has performed, if they so choose, they will be allowed to leave that round, to leave the room. If students are not comfortable sitting in for the entire length of the round, we are permitting them this year that they are allowed to leave. And again, if they choose to do so, they should not be penalized. And this is something that shouldn't even be mentioned on the ballot. It's just one of the protocols that we've enacted for this weekend to try to make sure everybody feels as comfortable as they possibly can. And the last thing that's worth mentioning is that there are no observers at all in any of the speech preliminary rounds on Saturday, no observers in octafinals or quarterfinals on Sunday. So it is just the 3 judges and the students that are assigned to that room and no one else. That includes, if it's one of your, a friend, it includes children, anyone. It is just the students that are assigned to the room and the 3 judges, nobody else. We will allow some limited observers for semifinal and final rounds. You won't have to worry about that if you're judging those rounds. We actually will have tab staff that will be outside each of those venues to make sure that only the set number that are allowed into those rooms is allowed, and then we'll shut that off. So just so you know, again, if you do have an observer that comes into the room, you can politely just ask them to leave. And if they say, oh no, I need to be here for whatever reason, text us. Again, that number will be at the top of every ballot for every round. Just send us a text and let us know, and we'll come down and deal with the issue and make sure that the person leaves. So those are the protocols that are in place for this weekend that are probably a little bit different than what we normally do. But hopefully that will help ensure that everybody has a safe and comfortable tournament. And that's really what we're striving for, is that everybody leaves and they feel comfortable about the performances and what they've done. To talk about the events themselves, I'm going to turn things over to Tom Beck from New York City, and he is going to talk about the NCFL events.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces. I see a lot of familiar names. I see some graduates, alums that are judging. That's great. I'm just going to take you through the categories for the NCFL and what those criteria that we spend a lot of time putting on the ballot are about. And then after that, Frank Riccobono, who's our tech person, will be taking you through the actual how do you do the ballot. So I'm just going to go through the categories. The one thing before we start is kind of building off what Greg said about what goes on the ballot. A good ballot should have things that the student did well and what they could improve upon. And some may say, well, Tom, this is nationals. Yes, it is, but some other kids may be going on to another national tournament. They do want that feedback. They crave that feedback. We know that it's just, you know, a gift that they are here, that they have qualified. That's wonderful. But not everyone gets a trophy. So sometimes the only thing they get is the feedback you give them. So thank you, judges, for being here. Thank you for doing this, because it would not be possible to have this tournament without the judges. So thank you, thank you. Many of you know that I'm originally from Chaminade High School, and Brother George, when he used to do this training back in the day, always said, when you're writing the ballot, make sure that that's where all your comments go. A good judge is a quiet judge, right? There's nothing wrong with being polite, taking attendance, making sure everyone is there, and starting the round, right? You don't want to say, oh my gosh, you were wonderful, you should be on Broadway, because the other kids in the room hear, you're terrible, why are you here? And they flip out because they're teenagers. So what I would ask you to do is all comments go on the ballot, nothing oral and nothing shared. Someone brought up to me at the meeting last time when we were together, what if I think there's a rules violation? We're going to talk about that. But since they are paneled, the judges, as 3 of you, you should just tick a lock, judge it as you see it, and then come to protest and say, there's no way that this is a prose, or there's no way this is a short story. But if you start saying it to the other judges, and then we find out indeed there is a version that is legal for this event, you've kind of tainted the pool, okay? So again, that's an individual thing. Judges do not confer. We rarely see 111. We see 152, 653, whatever it is, but it's not, it's all individual. We just have you all 3 at once, all right? I'm going to start with extemporaneous speaking. So extemporaneous speaking, the student has 1/2 hour with our prep room to prepare a question they have chosen. They're going to come to you with that question, and they're going to answer that question, not the question they wish they got, but the question that they hand you. And they may do that for a variety of ways. They may have 3 points of analysis. They may have 1 big point of analysis. There is no cookie cutter required as to how they answer that question, but the answer has to be there. Do they answer the question using effective speaking and, of course, data to back up what they have found? Obviously, a lot of these questions are politically based, so they may not share, the student may not have the same political opinion that you share, but this whole weekend is going to be about, as judges, putting our biases aside, listening and saying, okay, who best answered the question, right? A lot of times judges will flow what the speaker says in Extemp, like their 3 points. That's great, but it's also important to give them feedback, what they did well with the speech and what needs to be improved upon in that extemporaneous speech, okay? The key thing in Extemp really is the time, right? So timing is key. Kids have been coached to signpost or change topics or whatever it might be while they are speaking and need to see the passage of time. So someone should decide among the 3 of you who will be the official timekeeper, and then cater to each student how they would like to see the passage of time. In Extemp, it's the one where they get 7 minutes and 30 seconds grace period. So a lot of the kids in the New York area will say, could I have 5 down? So after 2 minutes have elapsed, you show them 5 left, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then 6:30, then 7. And then they get till 7:30, they get the Sister Ramon Memorial Tea, which means they have gone overtime and they cannot be ranked first. So doesn't mean they're last, it just means they're not first if they exceed 7 minutes and 30 seconds. It's important that that is official timekeeper has talked to that student and wants to make sure this is what I'm going to do. Does this work for you? I bring this up because sometimes people have visual impairments and may need to have you knock on the table or something. Okay, so please cater to each kid to make sure that they know how they're going to see the passage of time. All right, and that's extemporaneous speaking. The next category we're going to move to is original oratory. Original oratory, God bless these children. They have written their own speech and they are presenting it to you. They have 10 minutes and 30 seconds. In all of these, there is no minimum, but there is certainly a maximum. They have 10 minutes and 30 seconds to do what they would like with their speech. It could be a persuasive speech. It could be a speech to inform. It's to eulogize, to celebrate, whatever they'd like to do with it. It should have some sort of beginning, middle, and end. And they're going to bring that to you, okay? And people often say, Tom, if they wrote it, why do I have to time them? Don't they know? Well, maybe they had not enough Starbucks or too much Starbucks, and they know they have to be up to the part about grandma coming from Ellis Island at this minute, right? So that's why they may ask for time. If they don't ask for time, it still is the judge's responsibility to figure out which of the 3 of you will be the official timekeeper and keep time, okay? With original oratory on the ballot, it does say that you can comment as well on the content. And what that means is they have written it. So the way an English teacher might look at an essay and say, wow, you start with this really important story, and now you're talking about tap dancing elephants. I'm not seeing the connection. Did I miss a transition? That certainly you could comment upon. But again, they may have a different political or philosophical point of view of something. You don't want to sting them on that if it's different than yours, okay? So think of it more of an essay and how it flows. That you could certainly comment on the writing, but we are here for speech, right? So the speech is really the more important, how they hold the room, how they use vocal variety, facial expressions, whatever it might be to deliver their message to you. They have 10 minutes and 30 seconds. Yes, a lot of kids are going to be able to have their stopwatch. That's lovely, but they're not the official time. We ask that a judge be the official time as the adult in the room. All right. Now we're going to move on to oral interpretation. The children have prepared 2 different programs, one poetry and one prose. Okay. So the poetry and the prose, they are going to alternate when we do the coin flip that day. We'll tell you which is going to be first round, and then it'll alternate. Now, poetry could be one long poem. It could be a Chaucer tale or a ballad, or it could be a series of poems around an idea, a motif, a theme, just by the same author, whatever they would like to do with poetry. Prose basically is whatever ain't poetry. It can't be a play because plays are in drama, right? Leave that for the stage. These are short stories, essays, excerpts from novels. All those things qualify as prose. It may be a poetry or prose where they're playing different characters and they may have different focal points for each character and how they speak, or different character voices. They may break the fourth wall as though you were delivering Holden Caulfield's speech from Catcher in the Rye. He talks right to the audience, right? Or maybe it's not, it's an omniscient narrator who talks. There is a script, and it might be there for, because this is a reading event. It's certainly not having them read the whole thing like this, but there should be a balance between the script and either the focal point they're choosing or the audience. Now, again, that's up to the judge. It says a good balance. I don't know what good is in your book versus someone else's book, but again, they should turn a page, I would think, once or twice during the program. With both of these, they are going to be using primarily this: face, eyes, voice, rate, pausing, volume. Certainly gesturing is appropriate, pivoting, but it's not back handsprings and cartwheels. We save that for dramatic performance, okay? Not an oral interp. Again, with OI, a lot of us have been around for a while. We always, oh, poetry always rhymes. Not these days, right? So don't assume something is the wrong genre of literature. That is on the onus of the protest committee. If you think something isn't correct, you just judge it the way you see it and bring it up with them, and they will take it up with the coach, okay? Oral interpretation, again, is 10 minutes and 30 seconds. There is no minimum, but there certainly is a maximum, and they may ask for time signals as well. All right, which takes us to duo. Hopefully we've got 2 people. That was a challenge for this year, getting them both there on a Saturday with ACT, SAT, this, that, whatever. So duo is 2 people performing a scene from, it could be from a play, it could be from a story. It is basically, they could play, each could play 1 character, or they each could play 100 characters. They're going to create the situation and transport you out of the convention center into the world of these 2 characters and their interaction, whether it be humorous, serious, a combination of both, but they're playing characters with wants and obstacles to overcome. So how do they do that? Well, it's very clever. The rules are, it's very presentational. They cannot look at each other except for an introduction or any transitional material in the middle of the piece that might kind of fast forward as what we're doing. But they're going to be very creative in how that's done, right? Lost an earbud. And they're going to be creative in how that's done. So that is with duo. Again, it's 10 minutes and 30 seconds. And you will see, again, it's the team working together. Oftentimes these plays, the way they're cut, or these cuttings, I should say, are not equally 50-50. But when the person's not speaking, they shouldn't be, kind of filing their nails or looking up what they're going to have for lunch. They're engaged in the scene and reacting facially to what the other person is doing. Okay. And again, who effectively works as that team to transport you into that world that they've created? Could be humorous, could be serious, could be a combination of the 2. 10 minutes and 30 seconds. They may ask for time. If they go over, in all the events, if they go over the 30 seconds, they cannot be ranked first. They can be 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, okay? Declamation. I love declamation. Declamation is the building blocks of the forensics program. It is a novice event only for freshmen and sophomores. And these students are learning how to hold a room's attention. They have found, or they've been handed, a speech that someone else gave. It could be a famous political speech. It could be a famous commencement speech. It could be an old oratory. It could be, a commencement speech by a celebrity, whatever it is. They have found this speech, or they've been given this speech, and they're going to take it and bring the message of that speaker to you using their freshman and sophomore self. They're not going to become Ellen DeGeneres or become Barack Obama or become MLK, if that's what they picked. They're going to, through their own self, using their own voice and vocal variety and volume and pausing and platform movement, they're going to deliver this message to you. And that one, again, memorized 10 minutes and 30 seconds. There is no minimum. Again, sometimes people will say, oh, I wish this was longer. Well, you can't call Yitzhak Rabin's granddaughter and say, could you stretch that eulogy? That's all she wrote, right? So the kid is bringing that to you. Obviously, if someone's speaking really quickly, you could comment on that, but the speech is what the speech is, right? And they've picked it. So again, how do they use those basic building blocks of speech to effectively bring the message that speaker had in their speech? And that's declamation. And lastly is dramatic performance. Dramatic performance is clearly, I keep referring to, I think, the freest in the movement. Here you can have your back handsprings and your tap dancing. We in the NCFL do not separate humorous and serious. They are together. So there could be funny pieces, you know, in one round you could be laughing hysterically and also crying given the circumstances that what they've picked. But in dramatic performance, the students have a selection that they memorized from a play, or a screenplay perhaps, or it could be a prose that they are going to present to you. And it could be a monodrama where they're playing one character, or it could be they're playing 100 characters. They are, again, have created the situation using themselves, and how do they transport you out of that convention center or hotel room, wherever you may be during the day judging, into that world of that character, right? Using all those building blocks of speech to come together and create that. And that's dramatic performance. Again, 10 minutes, 30 seconds, no minimum, but if they do go over, they can't be ranked first. In all of these things, again, it's important, and I always say it locally to my own judges, we could not do this without you, so we thank you 110% for being judges. Just make sure that you give 100% of your attention to the kids, right, as they speak. It's very tempting with these things to be like, if you're using it for your timing, that's awesome, that's great. Tab Room has a timing thing built in as well, if you'd like, which Frank will show you to talk about. But you know, we hate to hear reports of kids saying someone was texting during my round, someone was watching a movie during my round, right? Someone was asleep during my round. Try to give your 100% to the kids. This is nationals, it means so much to them. And we have coached them to know that they are la creme de la creme, as Sister used to always say. And you are there to give them feedback to help them be even better. So thank you very much. That's kind of my spiel for the events. And now I will turn it over to Frank Riccobono to talk about the technical side of things.
Frank, just before you begin, I just want to piggyback real quick on what Tommy said, and just remind people that most students that attend this tournament will not leave with a trophy. They won't leave with a medal. The only thing they'll leave with are your ballots. So we like to remind judges of that, just so that they know. And I also just wanted, one thing I meant to mention earlier is that some of you will judge the same event twice on Saturday, and that's perfectly fine. You should not see the same student more than once, but you may get 2 rounds of dramatic performance or 2 rounds of declamation or any of the events. You may see more than once, and that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to clarify that, because we know that's going to happen this weekend. And I will now turn things over to Frank. And thank you, Tom.
Thank you. So before we get into the main tech thing, as we did in past years, there will be a live doc, and I believe that live doc is still being finalized, so the link hasn't been shared around, but that should also be, it's a shared Google Word document that should be your main point of information during the tournament. So you should get that link from your head coach, or it will be emailed to you through Tab Room. Please keep an eye on that document throughout the tournament. So I'm going to show you what we actually will see on Tab Room when you get your first ballot. So what I have here is a simulation of Tab Room. This is a simulation, but this is roughly what you will see. If you click on your name in the top right of the screen, once the tournament has started and ballots have been released, you'll see a screen that looks like this with your current ballots. There'll be a list of what round you're judging with the abbreviation for each category. In past versions of this, I would tell you about this camera button, but because we are in person, there will not be a camera button here. There will just be a building location. So depending on which event you're judging, there'll be something in the marquee or the convention center and an indication of which room you should be in. There will be a start time and then a list of students in the round. Typically, they'll be listed here by a numerical code, and to see their names, you'll have to click into the ballot itself. As soon as you,
You said,
I'm just going to mute everyone else. As soon as you get this ballot, you should click this start button, even if the start time is 9 o'clock and you're getting the ballot at 8:30. As soon as you see this ballot, click the start round button. That will open the ballot for you and also let us in tab know that you are in fact present and accounted for. You're aware you're judging this round. When you open the ballot, you'll see the names of the students you're judging. Depending on how we have the ballot set up, there may or may not be a place to put in the title of their piece. There's a space to put in your ranked, and I believe for nationals, there will not be a space for speaker points, but I'll go through that just in case, but I don't believe we'll be using those. At the bottom of the screen is a place where you can write these all important comments that we've been talking about. When you first land on the page, there'll be a selection here that says everyone. So if you type something in this box, whatever you type will go to everyone in the round. So you might want to put some general comments about the round in there or explain overall how you made your decision. But most of what you're typing is going to go into the individual students. So say Sylvia is speaking. Once Sylvia is speaking, you'll put comments for Sylvia into the box that says goes to Sylvia and coaches. And then when Sylvia finishes, you can start putting comments in for Carlos. And you can click save to save your comments or to save your whole ballot. We strongly recommend, especially now that we're not doing this virtually and you're going to be subject to wireless internets of various hotels and convention centers, do not use this space to draft your comments. It's a good idea to have Word or Notepad open, write your comments in there, and then when the speaker is finished, copy and paste your comments into the ballot. We've had too many times where there's an internet blip and the judge clicks save only to realize that the internet cut out and all their comments are lost. So please write your comments somewhere outside of Tab Room and then copy and paste them into here when you're finished. Once the round is over, you can rank your students. By the way, this is the stopwatch that Tom mentioned, so you can use that instead of your cell phone. I usually don't like using this one, especially because it's a down counting stopwatch and it makes it harder to figure out how much time the student already spoke for, but it is available to you if you want to use it. Once the speakers are finished, you can type in your ranks. I'm just going to make something up. And we will not be using points because this simulation has points set up. I have to enter some in. The points need to be consistent with the ranks. So let's say 97, 95, 93, 91, 89, 89, and 87, for example. You can submit your ballot. It will ask you to confirm your ballot. So here, the students will now be written not in the order they spoke in, but in the order they ranked them in. So you can get another chance to look at this and say, yes, I think Sylvia was the best person in the room. I think Christopher was the least best person in the room. And either, yes, that's correct, or you realize, oh, I made a mistake. I should have switched Fletcher and Carlos. So you can click the red button, come here, and fix your rankings. Let's imagine, though, that it's correct. We've clicked confirm. That is it for your obligation. You have submitted your ballots. It's important you get those ballots to us as soon as possible after the round is finished, but you have until the end of the tournament to write your feedback. So once you've submitted your ballots, you can find your previous ballots here. You'll see your ranks, and then you can click this edit feedback button to get back into your ballot and update all of your feedback for each of the students. I should show you this. So this is a simulation. I'm going to share this ballot link with you. So we will not be using points for the tournament, but this sample has a page with points built in. So I'm going to share this link with all of you. This is totally fake. You can type anything in here. It will never leave your computer, but it'll allow you to play with the buttons and get a feeling for what the Tab Room ballot looks like. This is my actual Tab Room page. So the way you get to that ballot is at the top right of the screen. You'll see your email here. You can click on that and you'll see you are registered for the tournament. And there should be a note here that says online ballots will be available starting May 27th. So right now there's nothing here, but once the tournament starts and the ballots are available, you'd click on your email, bring you to this page, and your upcoming ballots will also show up here just like the sample that I showed you. Other things I should mention. So I said about writing your comments outside of tab room, making sure to press start as soon as you get your ballots. I think that's it. And with that, I think we're going to end the recording, but I will stay on and be able to answer any tech questions, and Tom and Greg and Susan will also be able to answer any general tournament questions as well.
Thank you, Frank. And I'll say again, thank you to Tom and Susan. And Frank, I'm actually just going to share my screen with that website because I'm not sure if the chat shows up in the recording or not. So I just want to make sure that on the recording, that is the website that you can find a sample ballot. You'll have to type that in, obviously. If you're watching this on YouTube, you won't be able to cut and paste, but that's where you go. It's HTTPS, obviously, nycfl.tech/ballot-example. And hopefully the folks who are watching this on the recording will be able to do that. So we are going to stop the recording here. And those of you that are watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in, and we appreciate your time.